Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about some A&P, and it's time to learn about the birds and the bees. Hopefully, you've already learned that stuff. We're going to go a little bit deeper, though, than what we learned in the back of the school bus. And, of course, we're talking about the reproductive system and the human genetics. Now, this is going to be a two-part one. Part one is going to be on the actual reproductive things that we got to worry about, and we're going to kind of relate that to emergency medicine. And then part two is going to be on the human genetics and the pregnancy side of it. So, to no further ado, let's get moving here. There we go. Learning objectives, yay. And let's get to those. If you would like to watch those, by all means, download the slides and play along. So again, one thing to remember that the reproductive system, for the organism to survive, it is not essential for our survival. Now, for the biome, if we're going to that level, the communities, in order for the species to go on, yes, we have to have this. Remember that the male and female reproductive systems are, again, very different. They do two different functions. And the reproductive system is linked to our genetics. Again, the meiosis process of division, cell division, that creates the sex cells, which are your gametes, and basically your eggs and your sperm. Those are the ones that are created through the meiosis process. And then remember that our reproductive organs also release certain hormones that are to maintain our secondary sex characteristics. Growth, and matter of fact, in some cases, it provides the other sex with with those same hormones again. So small traces amounts are made in other places. Excuse me. So again, the human reproductive system, again, it includes all the male-female structures responsible for sexual reproduction. And again, the patient's family medical history, we've been getting family medical history because, again, if dad had a heart condition and grandpa had a heart condition, and now I've got a patient with chest pain, there's a pretty good chance that he's inherited those bad genes from the family. So again, these are things that come into play. Let's start with the ladies. Ladies first. Again, we're going to talk about the oocyte. That is the female sex cell. And again, it's reproductive organs. It's released again by the ovaries. The reproductive organs then transport it via the fallopian tubes down into, again, to the uterus, and where hopefully somewhere in that area, fertilization does happen. It's also used for giving birth to the child, and it gives out the female sex hormones. And those guys are usually the ovaries, by the way. So again, the ovaries here, they release the oocyte into the fallopian tubes, and then we travel down the fallopian tubes. Usually, guys, fertilization happens somewhere within this fallopian tube within a certain amount of time. Again, the uterus has a lining to it. It is there to catch the egg if it has been fertilized and begin to nourish it. Again, that's where your zygote, or the beginning structures, the beginning of the baby, if you will, is going to take place. It's also a very muscular organ, so it's responsible for delivery once the baby is again fully developed. Again, the uterus leads into the cervix. The cervix is the opening to the uterus that leads to the vagina, and of course the vagina is the external opening to all of this material. So again, the ovarian tissue, it has an inner medulla. It's got an outer cortex. Again, they do kind of two separate things, and it's in place by the mesovarium, and it has ligaments that suspend it there, and it's also got ovarian ligaments that hold it in place. Again, otherwise it would be bouncing around, floating around. We don't want it to do that. But the three main functions of those ovaries, again, is to produce the eggs, the immature female gamete. It's supposed to secrete female sex hormones, which is your estrogen and progesterone. And then it secretes inhibin, which is part of the feedback control system for your follicle stimulating hormone. Remember that it doesn't continually, your ovary don't continually throw eggs out. Again, it's on a cycled time frame, and it's usually controlled by a hormonal situation. Again, oogenesis is the maturation, and again, it results in the ovum being released in the follicle. The fallopian tube brushes against the follicle, accepts the eggs, and that brings it into the fallopian tube. Your ovum is your female gamete, again, or mature egg. Now, the ovaries, again, during the reproductive years of a woman's life, it's the pituitary gland that actually releases the hormones on normally a 28-day cycle. However, guys, it can be longer or shorter, okay? Stress plays a big deal about that particular condition. Other outside influencing factors can play a role in this. So it's not every 28 days they have an egg. No, that sometimes it can be a little bit longer. Every now and then it can be actually a little bit shorter. So again, most women of reproductive age are usually on a standardized cycle. They know when that time of the month is going to be coming. Now your ovaries, again, it stimulates one of the oocytes, and that would be the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone. And these are the hormones that control, again, the egg release. Now, meiosis. Remember when I said that the thing about a sex cell, it's only got, instead of 46 chromosomes, which is a normal DNA strand for us, it's only got 23. So it actually splits into two and then splits again. And at that point, when it splits the second time, it actually goes from 46 chromosomes to 23. So again, it gives half of the genetic information that's needed for a new life. And again, that's how the species perpetuates. Again, we add genes from one to the other, from the male and the female, and that's how you create a new organism. Now, your fallopian tubes, these guys are long, slender. They're connected to the uterus, providing passageway to the uterine cavity from the ovaries. And again, fertilization usually occurs in one of these. Oh, speaking of that, let's back up just a second, because something I didn't cover. So you can actually have an egg that will produce, usually it's one side or the other, but every now and then you're going to get a one that's going to do the, it can actually come from both sides, especially if they are taking some sort of medication to enhance egg production. So again, you can have that. Matter of fact, in order to have not the identical twins, but the fraternal twins, again, you've got to have an egg coming from either both sides or a release of two eggs, in which case that they would have to fertilize. It is rare, but it does happen. Most of the time, it's usually one ovary or the other that does that. Back to this guy here again, the infundibulum, where the ostium and then the cilia, they move it along. Those are your infundibulum. It just kind of helps move it along, all of the things in the body here. It just helps move that down the pathway. And one of the things that we do worry about is every now and then you'll get an immature implantation. You'll have a fertilized egg that actually implants within the fallopian tubes. Of course, we call this an ectopic pregnancy. And the problem is when those guys rupture, the fallopian tubes are not built to having a growing embryo inside of them. It could cause major problems. Now, your uterus is a pear-shaped hollow organ, muscular wall is about the size of a fist. Receives a developing embryo and sustains its development. And again, the uterine body is the main portion, and then your fundus is the top part of the uterus. The reason that I bring up the fundus, when we have postpartum bleeding, one of the things that we will do is massage the fundus in order to help it relax, which will reduce the amount of bleeding after a delivery happens. Your cervix is the part of the uterus that extends into the vagina. And again, the cervix is what actually dilates during your pregnancy. And once it reaches full dilation, that's the point the birth is imminent. It's about to begin. So there's three layers: the endometrium, the myometrium, and the perimetrium. Endometrium, the reason I bring this into play is because that sometimes will get infected or inflamed, endometriosis, a rather painful situation, and can cause definite problems if the female is pregnant. Again, they're held in place by ligaments. Again, there's broad ligaments, the uterosacral ligament, but there's several ligaments that hold it in place. Matter of fact, when they do a cesarean section, usually they will open up the patient and they'll lift up these ligaments to bring out the uterus out of the body. and then they at that point will deliver the baby. If you guys get a chance to do that in OB, it is a fascinating experience to watch. Now your menstrual cycle, again, remember that we have to have fresh blood and nutrients in the uterus in order to accept the egg. If we do not have that, again, problems occur. So every 28 days, once the body realizes that an egg has not been fertilized, at that point, it sheds that lining, usually for 3 to 4 days. The first day, usually extremely heavy. These can vary patient to patient. So please don't just say, well, you have a period for 3 days. No, it can take longer. Sometimes they'll have very little or no discharge at all. Sometimes that does happen. So again, your Graafian follicle, these are the guys that are developed ovum, and these are the guys that actually attach, okay? And ovulation, this ruptures through the surface, through the ovary, and then if the fertilization occurs, the fertilized egg will go through the fallopian tubes, and it should implant in the uterus, all right? If it does not occur, again, the hormonal changes will cause the corpus luteum, which is your blood inside of that area. It will cause it to be slothed along with the uterine lining. Okay. So again, your corpus luteum is that remnants of the Graafian follicle. It's essentially the unfertilized egg. It just simply comes out. Size-wise, guys, we're talking even less than the drop of a pin of a head. So the head of a pin, excuse me. So again, it's very small. You would never even, I'm going to go pick up the corpus luteum. I doubt it very seriously. You're going to even be able to see it. Again, the recurring cycles, they happen, but, these two right here, I would definitely know because we're going to use this to kind of help, describe when they have different types of cycles. Usually around the age of 8 to 12, it kind of varies on the patient, but that's the menarche. Again, is the time of the first menstrual cycle, and usually the menopause is or the final cycle is when they will not have any more menstrual cycles. Change of life is what is sometimes commonly called. All right, so again, during each life cycle, again, the lining of the uterus proliferates, it prepares for the egg. In other words, it gets ready for a new one. If there's not one new one, then it will shed it. It will shed that lining. Okay, and then again, the cycle is usually 28 days in time frame, usually. And these are controlled by the different hormones, again, that help you, the gonadotropin releasing hormone or the follicle stimulating hormone. So these are all controlled in, and actually the reason I kind of bring this up is because most birth control pills use kind of a way to trick the body into thinking that it is or isn't pregnant. So even though that there might be a follicle that's going through that's actually been fertilized, unfortunately, the way that the birth control pill actually works is that it makes it think that, oh, it's time for the progesterone. And that's why and when you stop taking that, that's that week off. That's when you end up having your cycle when you're on birth control pills. They do use birth control pills, by the way, to help regulate menstrual cycles, by the way, especially if they're having a really painful menstrual cycle. They will actually kind of use that to control it. All right, so again, this is just a simple graph of when these things happen. Again, pre-ovulation, usually around day 14. The temperature, by the way, goes up just a little bit inside the vagina and the uterus when this happens. So yes, there is some truth to, if there's a temperature change, they're probably ovulating. Yep, that is a very true thing. Now, again, it's the vagina is a muscular. It forms the lower female reproductive tract. It's also known as the birth canal. Your hymen, there is a thick mucosal layer. If it has been untouched by man, it's usually right in this generalized area. There's a dirtier term for it. But again, usually this ruptures upon some sort of insertion of something that shouldn't be there. And again, there's 3 major functions. So again, the vagina eliminates the menstrual fluids. It receives the penis during intercourse, and it will actually hold the spermatozoa and actually, in a way, kind of helps bring that into the body so that they can help fertilize the egg. Again, the outside's known as labia majora. Again, your mons pubis is up on top, just above that. The clitoris, again, is a sexual stimulation organ. And, again, that's what also lubricates, for the area of the penis when that gets excited. The vestibule and the vestibular glands, again, produce secretions to reduce friction, during the intercourse process. Yes, there's actually real anatomical things that go on during that particular thing. Now, your mammary glands, okay, they produce milk. Again, it's a modified sweat gland. That's right, breast milk is a modified form of sweat. Again, usually they have 15 to 20 glandular lobes in there, and it's the superficial fat that actually gives the breast its shape. The outside of that was the raised nipple area. It's called the areola. And then, of course, the areolar glands, they secrete, in order to protect the nipple and the areola during nursing. So they will secrete, different, protective measures, fluids, in order to help that. So, yes, these are actual things that go on. Again, remember that the lobes actually produce milk, and this is the area of the mammary glands in which the milk is stored. And if you've ever been with a nursing mom, there's not really, quote unquote, stopping this. I've had several partners over the years that literally you'd run call after call, and we would literally have to go out of service for a few minutes so that she could pump off. In order to, because I mean, she would be sitting there and be leaking underneath her uniform, and she'd finally go, hey, LT, I got to. I'm like, okay, go do your thing. All right. So again, the ligaments, they support the mammary glands as they get older. Of course, these begin to stretch out farther. So yes, there's truth to, especially if you've tried to do a 12 lead on an older lady who have bigger breasts. They usually find out that they're a lot longer. We have to lift up in order to do a 12 lead, and that's the reason why. Gravity, unfortunately, takes its place. Now, let's talk about the boys for just a minute. So again, the boys, the sperm cells are made, again, in the testes. There's 2 of them. Again, primary sex organs. They are contained in the scrotal sac. Again, the sperm will mature in these, in the top parts of the epididymis here, and then they will go into, they will go down to the prostate where further lubrication can be put into them. And in which case it forms your sperm fluid that's to be injected into the female. That's the plan of that. Again, the testes are the male reproductive organs. Again, it secretes the male hormones as well. That's what the testes do. It causes facial hair. It causes musculature development. The dartos and their cremaster muscles, again, these are used for expellation of the sperm fluid when necessary, when properly excited. Your testes combine the action of cremaster muscles, and the scrotal maintains the temperature. That's why they're housed outside the body, because actually they like to be a little bit cooler. The sperm, again, if they were to be inside the body, and by the way, it's both ways, whether it's too warm or too cold, again, it can stop the spermatogenesis. It won't occur. So again, this is the example of the cell division. And again, remember, they decide to split. It splits into 2, and then it will split again, which will end up making 4 spermatozoids, which once they mature, they'll mature in the epididymis, and they mature in the spermatozoa. So again, the spermatozoa is your sex cells. Again, it contains 23 of the chromosomes. Again, you add these 23 to the eggs, boom, we have a new organism. All right. So again, a mature sperm cell has a head, neck, and a tail. You might want to remember that one. I think that one, I'm fairly certain that you're going to see that somewhere later on. Again, ducts and glands. Again, there's several of them that go into this. Again, the epididymis is where they start to add these fluids. And then once they get to the prostate, they add some more, in which case you have your final maturation process. They flow into the vas deferens. The reason I bring up vas deferens is usually a vasectomy. So this is the actual part where they will cut and cauterize those tubes. This allows the male to become sterile. And again, especially our older patients or married patients, we might need to know whether or not they have had a vasectomy or not. There are some medical implications from doing this. The spermatic cord, it passes kind of into the inferior abdominal wall. into the inguinal canal and then up the abdominal cavity. So you can actually tear these things. It'll start to leak into the stomach area. Again, the prostate, again, it's a kind of a chestnut shaped right at the base of the urethra at the penis. And again, it's responsible for creating ejaculatory fluid, how you transport sperm into the female. The problem with that is that this guy, once he kind of outuses his sexual, he starts to get bigger and bigger usually, and he causes all kinds of problems, especially in older men. The matter of fact, to the point where you can actually cut off the urethra, you can actually cut off the ability to pee, and again, these can cause some further problems. The ampulla is the pouch where the vas deferens at the prostate glands. That's where the sperm actually joins with the ejaculatory fluid. Again, the seminal vesicles, again, they located next to the ampulla of the vas deferens, and it produces most of the liquid, the fluid portion of the semen. And at that point, it goes through the bulbar urethral glands. Again, we talked about that a little bit when we were talking about the bottom of the muscular wall. When these things contract, that's what actually causes the semen to be ejected from the male. All right, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, contrary to popular belief, yes, we can live without this guy right here. The male is a penis, again, has 3 columns of erectile tissue, the corpum casanova, which are the outer types. And guys, I do know for a fact that these will break. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you can get a penile fracture. And I will tell you, yeah, they are usually gruesome when you actually get to observe them, and which I hope that you never get to observe them. But yeah, pretty much when those things fill up with blood, they become very rigid, obviously. But yes, they can actually be broken. So somebody can say, you can't break it. Well, actually, yeah, you can. Again, the corpus spongiosum is the glands, and that's the bulb of the penis, is where that is at. So at birth, again, there's a loose fold of skin there. It's called the foreskin. Kind of person or preference of the parents, I should say, whether or not they remove that or not. Most of them take it, again, it's often circumcised at birth. And the reason they do that usually is to help prevent, when you do leave the foreskin on, it is more subject to infections in the penile area. But most of again, there's a huge controversy whether it is better or not better. Both arguments, by the way, have pros and cons there. Again, blood vessels, again, they're in the nerves of the penis, and it runs down the dorsal side. So it's actually, yes, it does run at the top of it. So again, that's where your nervous control is actually happening. The perineum, that is the area between the urethral opening and the anus, male or female, by the way. It's got skin, it's got external genitalia, it's got some underlying tissue, and it divides the urogenital triangle and the anal triangle. And again, it supports the distal structures. So again, all of your support structures are usually in that perineal area. Woo! That was a lot of talking. So we're going to hold up on this one. We'll start this one on the next video. I will see you guys then.